Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation on the functions of behavior. Every behavior in life has a function, whether it's to gain something pleasant, such as attention, access to something you want, or sensory stimulation, or whether it's to avoid something unpleasant, which is the process of escape. Now, with attention, we all appreciate attention. We appreciate attention from family, from friends, from coworkers and bosses, from teachers. But the thing about attention is attention. And I know that sounds funny, but if you hit someone, you're going to get their attention just the same as you would if you said hello to them. We have to keep this in mind when looking at behaviors, because not all attention is good attention. Not all attention is bad attention. We all have needs or desires for things as well. Sometimes we engage in behaviors to get food, drinks, shelter, activities or hobbies, or even entertainment. Now, not all access is the same either. We don't gain access to these things the same way. Robbing a bank will gain you access to money, which is something that you need to help out with activities and hobbies, just the same as working a job would. Now, obviously, I have different side effects to these, and some are more socially acceptable than others, but access is access. We also have sensory stimulation. We all enjoy things that feel good to us, the sound of rain on a tin roof or our favorite band, the taste of fresh food, the feeling of warm sun after a cold day, or the touch of a loved one, even the sight of a beautiful sunset. Now, the way that we get access to these things aren't always the same, though. Speeding down the road is pretty exhilarating and stimulating, but in the same way, you could ride a roller coaster and get that same exhilaration or stimulation. Lastly, we all have a need to get away from things in life that are boring to us, painful to us, cause us pain or cause us heartbreak, such as a long, boring meeting, fingernails on a chalkboard, or danger. At least as prevalent, if not more prevalent, is escape than attention or sensory stimulation. That means that a lot of behaviors are fueled by escape, even more so than something fueled by attention or sensory stimulation. Now, we escape things in different ways. One way to escape a boring meeting would be to run right out of a room. Another way to escape that same meeting could be saying, I need to go. Now, obviously, some behaviors in society are more acceptable than others. Hitting someone is a lot less acceptable than saying hello to them. In order to determine what the function of some of these behaviors are when we're working with individuals with problem behaviors, is to use a functional behavior analysis. This process helps to identify the function, whether that's attention, escape, sensory stimulation, or access of the problem behavior. Once this problem behavior has been identified and the function of it has been identified, it allows us to find a replacement that's socially acceptable to that same behavior. We're going to take a look at a couple different problem behaviors, and we'll talk about their functions really quick, and then we'll look into some different replacements for those. So you have the problem behavior of hitting someone. Obviously, that's not socially acceptable. The function, though, is oftentimes attention for that. Robbing a bank would also be problematic behavior. That wouldn't be allowed in society. Function being get access to money. Speeding down a road would give you really good sensory stimulation if you're zooming right along. Obviously, that's not allowed in society. Sprinting out of a room would give you immediate escape from a boring meeting, but that also is not acceptable in society to do. Throwing a tantrum is a behavior we see a lot of times with individuals with problem behaviors. And that's fueled by access to oftentimes things that they desire, something that they want in life. Also, we see smacking of the chest. This is often common in individuals with autism spectrum disorder. This is a type of sensory stimulation. So let's look at some replacement behaviors for these. A replacement for hitting someone might be to say, hey, excuse me, instead. See, look at how that gains their attention in the same way that hitting someone would. Earning a paycheck would also gain you access to that same money that robbing a bank would. It might just take a little bit longer. Riding a roller coaster would give you the same sensory stimulation that speeding down a road would. but in a more socially acceptable manner. Saying, "I need to go" during a meeting would also provide you the same amount of escape from that meeting that sprinting out of a room would. Using a picture icon to request access to something would serve the same function as throwing a tantrum as well. And hitting a tambourine could give that child the same sensory stimulation as smacking their chest. Now, when we're in the process of using replacement behaviors, we also want to use extinction. Now, extinction is withholding reinforcement for the behaviors that we don't want to continue on. So that hitting of the chest or that throwing of a tantrum. Now, in this, we stop the individual from that behavior fulfilling their intended function. So that would mean stopping that tantrum from serving that function of gaining access. Now, this is used to decrease problematic, not socially acceptable behaviors. One key note about this, though, is it should only be used alongside replacement behaviors. If you're using extinction by itself, you'll actually end up leaving a gap because that individual will no longer be able to gain access, gain escape, gain someone's attention with any method. So what we need to do is, if we're using extinction on one of these problematic behaviors, we need to come up with a different behavior that can step in instead that is more socially acceptable. Now, when we're using extinction, it normally follows the same type of graph. On this graph, you'll see two kind of key features. When we're using extinction, things get worse before they get better. Now, this might not sound too encouraging, but what's happening is that maximum effort is often implemented behind the behavior that's being extinguished in a process called extinction burst. So that means that if they're hitting you, they're going to keep hitting you harder and harder and harder up until the point that they realize that that behavior is not functioning. One key thing to remember about this is that if at any point before this extinction burst you give in, this will be the new standard of behavior. So if they realize that, oh, well, I just have to hit them harder or hit them more times, then in the future going forward, they just will roll on with that idea that, all right, well, instead of hitting them 6 times to gain what I want, now I just need to hit them 12 times. So you'll actually make things worse if you give in at any point before that extinction burst. After that extinction burst, you'll see that the problem behavior falls drastically. That's what we're wanting and what we're looking for. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that down the road, the behavior may be tested again just to see if it works. The child may see, hey, if I hit them, will this still work the same as it did back a long time ago? Now, what you want to do when this is occurring is ignore it just like the first time around. Otherwise, you'll start to see that behavior increase again. So in summary, every behavior has a function. Some behaviors are more acceptable than others. We want to replace unacceptable behaviors with acceptable ones. When we replace the unacceptable behavior, we begin the process of extinction, which has its highs and its lows. Thanks for listening to this video, and have a great day.